are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben
Hello
Worthington.
there, IELTS students. My name is Ben Worthington, and in this tutorial, I'm going to give you 3 Band 8 techniques for IELTS speaking. This is a 2-part tutorial. Before we start, I should let you know that you can learn these techniques very easily, very effectively, very efficiently, and I'll tell you how you can get these techniques and practice them at the end of this tutorial. Now, the first one that I want to mention, actually, let me just tell you who I am. My name is Ben Worthington, and I've been an IELTS tutor now for well over 12, 15 years. I've been teaching English since forever, since at least 2006. And yeah, I just really enjoy it. And I decided to focus on the IELTS because that's where the most motivated students were. You know, the IELTS is a high stakes English exam. And if you compare working with IELTS students to working with, you know, a group of teenagers who are forced to go to the class by their parents, it's a completely different ball game. And also, you know, with IELTS, it's all results driven, which is what I am a massive fan of. So let's jump into it today. We're going to start off with the first technique, which is listening. Now, I know that's ridiculous, but let me explain. It goes a little bit deeper. We call this technique in our classes, we call them reflection. Now, I learnt this technique because I remember once I was finishing a class, a private class with Juan, and Juan was just about to leave the class, and I had another student lined up to come in, and I was like, okay, Juan, and this is like the last 2 minutes of the class, and I was like, okay, Juan, would you like your next class on Tuesday or on Thursday? And he's like, yes. And I was like, no. Would you like your next class on Tuesday or on Thursday? And he's like, yes. And it's like, no. And then he could see the frustration. And I was like, okay, Juan. And then I said it in Spanish, which was a little bit cheeky. That we needed to finish the class and it was just more for efficiency. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But then I made a note. I was like, okay, Juan's not really understanding. Let's just practice this exact skill for the next class. So on Tuesday, which was the following class, I just kept asking him questions. And all I wanted him to do was repeat the tense, you know, and make sure that he understood. So if I asked him, would you like your next class on Tuesday or Wednesday, or Tuesday or Thursday? I insisted on the answer. I would like my next class on Tuesday, please, for example. And then we took it to another level where it was like, will you be playing football on Friday? And he's like, no, I play basketball. And I was like, no, Juan, let's keep it. You've got to reflect the tense like a parrot, at least just till you start improving your listening skills. And then eventually, obviously, he got to the point where he could say, yes, I will be playing football on Friday. Now, this may seem like an incredibly basic skill, but it is the foundation, because imagine you are in your IELTS test, and we've done this with Catherine, and this is how she scored her Band 7 in the speaking. This is one of the techniques she used to get Band 7 in the speaking. And what we do is we just ask question after question, and it just starts training your ear to listen for the correct tense, and it also trains your replies so that you're using the auxiliary verb, or you're using a short answer, or you're using the contraction, but you're using the correct one. And this is extremely robotic at the beginning. But what it does is, as I said, it's just perfect for the IELTS exam to start off your preparation, because, you know, imagine we're in part 3 and the examiner asks you one of those tricky abstract questions like, why do you think festivals are important in your country? Now, if you've got this reflection skill mastered and you've practiced it lots of times, two things are going to happen. One, your brain is going to be a little bit more at ease because it will know exactly what is going to be the reply. Yes, I think festivals are important in my country because. So you've already saved yourself a few seconds of thinking time, and you've already answered coherently. You haven't said, festivals, my country loves festivals. Next year we'll have a new festival called Dragon Boat Festival or whatever, which is slightly off topic. You didn't really answer the question. Whereas if you just use this direct reflection method, you're onto the right track. Now, as I said, this is extremely robotic. It's almost like a parrot. But what we do in our private classes is that we do this continuously until it starts becoming quick and automatic. And then, once it's quick, automatic and accurate, that you're using the correct tense, you're using the auxiliary verbs, then we start embellishing it, which is the next technique that I'm going to share with you. So just to summarize what you're doing, and if you've got an English tutor, you can ask them to do this with you. It might be a bit tricky. We will be offering private classes soon, and you can do it with me, and it's going to be quite an intense experience because I do my classes standing up and I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, just question after question after question, and it's just so much more effective this way, and we get you responding accurately in the correct tense. And the beautiful thing is, just one last thing, is that if you do this correctly, you're going to be using all the correct prepositions because you will reflect like a mirror exactly what the examiner said. So for example, if the examiner said, do you think it's important that students study after school? Now your reply will be, for example, no, I don't think it's important that students study after school. And we've reflected it word for word, so we've used all the correct prepositions, all the correct articles, and we've basically got like 20%, 15% of our answer perfect just because we listened intently. We learned how to listen, and then we used the reflection technique. Now, obviously, throughout the entire class, throughout the entire test, you do not want to be answering like a parrot for every single question because it starts to get a little bit unnatural. And the technique that I'm going to share with you to avoid this, which makes it sound a little bit more natural, makes you sound more human, which is always a good thing, and definitely boosts your score, is called embellishments. Now I'm going to share this technique in the next tutorial. That's why I said it's part 1 of 2, and I'll share it with an example with the student who got band 7 for the speaking, and you'll be quite impressed actually, I think. But the first part is just mastering the robotic reflection method. Now, the second technique I want to share with you, I'm going to share with you 3 techniques actually in this tutorial. Sorry, 4 techniques. So the next one is quite straightforward, but you don't want to underestimate it. Now, what we do is we start learning about the vocabulary, about where we come from. Now, in my case, I'm from a small town called Huddersfield. Now, when I started telling people about my town, the first time I was abroad, the second time I was living abroad, which was in Spain. The first time I was living abroad was in Australia, and everybody knew what wool and sheep and all of this were. But when I was in Spain, I had to research those specific terms. Wool, sheep, factories, industrial revolution. I found out all those terms because people were asking me, where are you from? And I say Huddersfield. And they're like, what? And then I'd have to explain a little bit about my town. And the first time I did this, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And I ran into brick walls. I ran into gaps in my vocabulary. So it's always important just to research the vocabulary unique to where you're from, because it's quite likely you're going to be asked a little bit about that just to warm you up in the test. Now later, I found another technique which also could be useful for you, is if you are tired of telling people where your city is or where your town is or what it does, just pick a city nearby. This is what I do. Nowadays, I just tell people I'm from Manchester because it's so much easier than educating them about my original hometown. And also, everyone always just says, oh, Manchester United, oh, Manchester City, oh, David Beckham, oh, Oasis. And it's got so many more hooks, so many more points where we can develop the conversation, which makes it easier for both of us. So consider telling them, telling the examiner, or even in just general conversation, consider telling the examiner that you're actually from a different city. Or you could just say, I'm from a small town near Manchester. And then that kind of directs the conversation. So you might say, I'm from a small village near Beijing, or I'm from a small village near Bangalore. And this way we don't have to get into the tedious explanation of explaining where your small town or village is. We just start the conversation with Bangalore. Ah, they used to have a decent cricket team there. I don't know, actually, I'm just joking. I'm just teasing the people who do love who are from Bangalore. Okay, next one. So, frameworks. If you've got a decent frameworks for especially part 2, this is going to save you preparation time. It's going to organize your answer far, far quicker, and it's just going to make everything sound a little bit better. Now, just like the essay framework, the part 2 framework, what we could usually do, obviously, is just work through the bullet points, but try to give examples, Try to give examples, because this, just like the essays, this forces you to use more vocabulary. Maybe you've got a cue card about working from home. So you could tell the examiner you've got, you work a lot from your laptop. It's a Compaq, or it's a Hewlett-Packard, or it's an Acer, or it's a MacBook, whatever. But just, adding those little bits of detail, they just free up your answer. They just give your answer that little bit more believability. They give it the details. They make it a little bit richer, and it just makes it easier to understand. For example, imagine you pronounce the word laptop incorrectly. Now, because you said MacBook, or because you said Acer or Compaq or Chromebook, whatever, you've given yourself a second opportunity to be understood. So this is why examples just make it so much easier. Now, another framework you could use within your cue card answer could be to develop an anecdote, or even better, you could even just go into more detail about what you're explaining. Now, I don't have time to give you the entire framework here, but I'm just saying, if you can find one, get using it, because just like with the reflection technique, eventually it'll start to become quick and automatic for you, just like our students find on the essay writing course. And this saves you a lot of thinking time. It boosts your confidence because you've immediately got a plan. You immediately know what you're going to be doing, and it just frees up some mental energy so you can start thinking of, better vocabulary terms. You can review your planned talk and just see, okay, I've said I'm going to say fun a few times here. What could I say instead of fun? Well, I could change it for exciting. I could change it for exhilarating. I could even squeeze in a conditional phrase. Like, if I had the chance to do it again, I definitely would. You see? And obviously the framework that you choose, you need to learn inside out. But if it has this whole procedure in an example, an anecdote, a conditional, maybe even an idiomatic expression, then you're on the right path. Now then, the final one is advanced structures for abstract descriptions. Now, again, we need to learn these to a level of automaticity. We need to learn them so much that you don't even think about using them. When we do our private classes, we are doing transformations and we are just drilling them. We're drilling them one-on-one. And if you just compare this to a group class, maybe with your preparation center, where you've got, 2 Chinese students, a Saudi Arabian, a German, a French, an Italian. Almost sounds like a joke, this, but imagine you've got all these nationalities, and then the class is an hour long. Let's say you've got 5 students and 1 tutor, so 6 people. That's 10 minutes each. At best, it's going to be 10 minutes of listening to a native English speaker, 40 minutes listening to non-native English speakers. It's just going to be a complete waste of time. I just really do not understand these group classes. It's just a waste. Whereas if you've got a private class with a competent tutor that doesn't ask you, how's your weekend? What do you like to do in your free time? Oh, today we're going to do Halloween vocabulary. Now, if you've got a teacher who's just on top of you and just drilling you for like 10 minutes to the point where you're like, oof, I think we need to have a break. Or like, where you're mentally exhausted afterwards. That's how you learn the language. You learn the language, especially in this case English, just by repeating it, and using it intensely for the whole duration of the class. And then a conversational exercise afterwards, repeating, reusing, recycling the grammar structures and the vocabulary, but in a more relaxed environment where the focus is fluency rather than accuracy. So let's just go back to what I said, because I got off on a bit of a rant there. So advanced structures for abstract descriptions. Now, as I said, we learn these by drilling them. This is exactly what we do in the private class. We will spend 5 to 10 minutes. Let's say, for example, we're doing the conditional. I will give you a sentence like, Manchester is famous because of its football team. And I'll give you sentence after sentence like that. And that, for example, Manchester is famous because of its football team. You reply, if Manchester didn't have its football team, it would not be famous. Can you see? And we just do these transformations so the conditional structures start to become automatic for you, that you have no problem using these structures and they become quick and automatic. Now, the beauty of this is once you start learning it to a certain level, you can start adapting it. And this is just basically accelerating the natural language acquisition process. So what do I mean by you can start adapting it? Well, you could say something like, if Beijing didn't have its public infrastructure, it would not be such an easy city to navigate. Or maybe a better example, Sydney would not be famous if it didn't have the Sydney Opera House. You see, in the second example, we just switched Manchester and football team for Sydney and Opera House. And then this is how you can start extending your knowledge of the English language. Now, when we do a private class together, after this, I will be recycling some of the vocabulary. So, for example, if you said, Ben, what's a football team? I'll say, okay, I know it's a basic example, but I'd say, okay, Football team is, about 11 guys usually, or women. And they're playing a game of football, and the team represents the unit. And you're like, okay, thank you. And then at the end of the class, when we've got 5-10 minutes, just relaxed conversation. It's not just general conversation. It's focused conversation about the topics and vocabulary that we covered about 5-10 minutes earlier, and especially the vocabulary that you either mispronounced or is new vocabulary. And this way, again, we've got that repetition, we've got that recycling, and it just makes the whole thing, the whole learning process more natural, more automatic, and gets you closer to fluency. And of course, it goes without saying, after a full hour, your confidence, after each class, your confidence is increasing, because you've basically spent 30 minutes of non-stop English tuition, non-stop English, speaking English. And for half of those 30 minutes, you listen to perfect English from a native English speaker, like myself. And for about 20 minutes, it was just focused exercises, focused on accuracy, because first comes accuracy and then should come fluency. Otherwise, it can be quite a mess. Okay, that's it for today. As I said, we are opening it up for private tuition very soon. Keep an eye on your inbox. We've got a few spaces. We've got about 4 spaces, and there'll be some coupons available as well. And in the next tutorial, called IELTS Speaking 3 Band 8 Techniques, Part 2 of 2, I'm going to tell you about perspectives. I'm going to talk about fishing hooks. It's quite useful. And it's also useful for just general conversation skills, and reflection embellishment, which is what I mentioned today. So keep an eye out for that. If you've got any friends who are struggling with the IELTS exam, please send them this tutorial, send them this podcast. If you need to pass fast, then go to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up, and you'll get a free crash course there on how to write IELTS essays, how to use the AI essay checker. It's just a great way to start. If you're struggling with the speaking as well, remember to sign up, because you'll also get information about these private classes that are going to be launched very soon. But there's only like 4 spaces, so keep an eye out for that. That's it for me. If you liked this tutorial, please leave us 5 stars. Please share it with your friends. That's all I ask. I do these for free. So if you could return the favor by giving us a 5-star review, that would be perfect. Have a beautiful day. Keep progressing. Keep moving forward. You've got this. Eventually you will pass the exam, and you will be in Australia, Canada, or the UK. So just keep your eye on the end goal. Have a beautiful day, and thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.